to another inspiration from Ken Park at Fallingbrook Heights Baptist Church at the Center. Here's Ken.
Welcome to Life 101. Take off your life's backpack, have a seat, take a deep breath, and let's rest for a while. As we do so, let me resume our story. In the simple Southwest, there were twin cities divided by a river. The residents of each one of those cities sought to enjoy life and to do well and prosper. One night, a great storm came to the twin cities, and as the wind blew and the storm raged, there were 3 lightning strikes that imperceptibly but indelibly changed 2 people. Everyone else seemed to wake up with the storm, but Sarah Livingston and Jonathan Riley slept through it. When they woke up, they had a form of amnesia. Sarah was in a hospital room. Jonathan was in a hotel room. They had a form of amnesia that kept them from understanding who they were and what they were doing before that time. And as they sought to understand who they were, they went to their backpack, and there were 7 things in their backpack which helped them understand what they were about. They learned from the things in their backpack as they sought to understand their amnesia that they were loved, that they mattered, that they had an origin and a destination, that they were given grace, that they were part of community, they had choices, and they had both made mistakes. And as they learned more about who they were through this amnesia, they met Dr. Arnborg. Jonathan did. And Sarah met Anya in the hospital where she was. All 4 of them were from 1840 Thin Ribbon Road. They worked through their adventures. They understood who they were and where they were. And after going to the train station and finding locker number 37 and finding the rest of Sarah and Jonathan's luggage, they then discovered their identity and their purpose. They discovered the map that would lead them to where they were going next. And as they have these things and understand what's next for them, we catch up with them in the Searching Soul Sojourner steak and seafood restaurant. It's in this restaurant, which Anya called the 5 S's, that they found, even though the restaurant was busy, a table was opening in the back patio corner. They sat down. The skies were clear and there was a early sunset glow. After they were seated, the hostess, wearing a pith helmet and safari outfit, returned with menus and water and warm buns and a smile. "Where are you going tonight?" she asked, pointing at the paper replica of an old map, a world map, on their table. A menu matching the map, with the claim of 7 continents of food, was in their hands. The hostess left the question hanging, but remained at the table. And Sarah said with a laugh, almost under her breath, "Well, 1840 Thin Ribbon Road." The hostess, whose name tag said Sojourner Alice, frowned and paused. "Sorry, that's not on the map. It's not on our menu. Why would you want to go there anyways?" Sarah and Jonathan were surprised with the answer and paused, and the hostess continued, "They tell me that's where I'm from, but I'm certainly not going to return." And Dr. Arnborg, sensing the growing tension, quietly asked Alice, "May I ask why?" Alice sighed and said, 3 twos. Too far to go, too costly to get there, too many rules. Why don't you consider our menus and I'll be back shortly." And Alice left the table. Dr. A turned to the menus along with Anya, but Sarah and Jonathan stared straight ahead. When Dr. A had looked up, Jonathan asked, "What does she mean, too far to go, too costly to get there, too many rules?" Dr. A responded, "Well, let's decide which cuisine and then we can talk over our dinner." Anya piped up, Can I order for us?" The other 3 put down their menus in agreement, and Anya motioned for Alice, the hostess, to come over. With her tablet in hand, ready to take their order, Alice listened to what they had to say, and Anya looked at the menu and ordered a sampler. Antarctic baked and iced fish. Green Asian salad with dried udon noodles. North American steak soup. Australian mutton. European cheese plate. African tea tumblers, and South American hot ice cream sweets, she said. With the order in through the tablet, Alice paused, seemingly having had composed herself, and smiled weakly. Dr. A took charge and said, Alice, if you don't mind me asking, and if you're not too busy, may I ask about your response to Thin Ribbon Road? Well, why do you ask? Alice said. Well, we too are from Thin Ribbon Road, and we're hoping to return. Dr. A looked at the other three who nodded in agreement. So Alice looked around at the 5S's restaurant and began. Well, you must have a card, a care kit. You must have the keys and the picture and the black credit card. You must have the dice. After each word, the four of them nodded, and Sarah and Jonathan, with growing embarrassment that Alice too knew of their backpack contents, flushed. And then Alice said, and you have the journal? Looking at their bags and the addresses on the front, Alice raised her eyebrows. Well, you must have the journal with you. Jonathan, sitting on the outside of the booth, reached into his bag and pulled out the journal. Alice reached for it and said, may I? And before he could respond, she had it in her hand and opened it up. And the four, withdrawing their breath, knowing the sensitive private information was in it, wondered what she would do next. Alice flipped it open to the center of the journal and laid it on the table. I see, she said, pointing to the paper. Here's your answer. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. And I hope you decide where else you'd like to go. But that's why I'm not returning. You can't go back. It's too hard to get there. It costs too much. There's just too many rules. The lake between us is impossible to cross. But, your food will be ready shortly. I'll be back. And with that, she clicked her teeth and spun on her heels and went back to the kitchen. All four of them looked at the journal that was opened on the table in front of them. At the top of the 3 pages in the middle of the journal, in bold typeset, as if it had come with the journal, said, the tally. And the rest of the 3 pages were set up as a grid. In neat columns, in Jonathan's handwriting, there were entries of a word and a number. At the bottom of each was a red or black sum total. Envy, 24. Greed, 62. Beauty, 21. Intellect, 34. Across the 3 pages were 20 or 30 opposing tallies or columns. On the left side of each one of these boxes was Jonathan's JR. On the other side of the column was someone else's initials. As Sarah and Jonathan looked at the journal facing them, Sarah pointed to one tally. It read JR and SL. Entries were made halfway down the list of various items. The color drained from Jonathan's face, and he tried to close the journal. With Sarah's hand on the journal, it was clear that she knew of the times that the journal referred to and the interaction of the tally. With this quick review, she knew what Jonathan thought of her. Not every entry was complimentary to Jonathan. Although the tally for Sarah and Jonathan was not complete, the exposure of this information was beginning to cause conflict. Jonathan snapped the journal closed. All 4 of them sat there for a moment, listening to their own breathing. They thought of Thin Ribbon Road as best they could, and of Alice's response. You can't go back. It's too hard to get there. It costs too much. There's just too many rules. Dr. A and Anya were silent. All four nervously ate their appetizers. Sarah ate the least. It seemed that tears were forming in her eyes. Jonathan's eyebrows furrowed, and he sat with his arms folded. Jonathan, looking at Dr. A, spoke in staccato. What is this tally? Why? Why did I record this? I don't understand. Anya touched Dr. A's arm. Can I explain for us? We are all scorekeepers. It's in our DNA to record and evaluate. But we have been broken and we abuse the system. The Father, the Master, has so much invested, so much given to us that it includes evaluating, determining, and making worth. But we've turned our scorekeeping into a weapon against each other. Jonathan sighed. Sarah asked to be excused. She wasn't hungry anymore. Anya responded before she got up and said, Okay, before you go, Sarah, are you willing to show your journal to Jonathan? After all, it's only fair. Sarah, indignant, pulled out the journal and opened the same pages. As Jonathan looked at her tally with him, with his name, JR, on the right-hand side, he relaxed and said, wait a minute. Sarah caught up with his focus and began to blush. Playfully but embarrassed, she closed the journal. And Dr. A began. There is an antidote to tally. It's not to rip it out and rip it up, but to keep on living as you're supposed to, mindfully and carefully, but with a new way. Sarah remained in her seat. I don't understand, she said. Me neither, said Jonathan. With all these tallies, how can we ever return to 1840 Thin Ribbon Road with more red summaries than black? How can I return to the Master and Father like this with all these tallies? Is Alice right? Is it too far to go? Is it too costly? Is there too many rules? Dr. A took a deep breath. Alice is right. On your own, you can't go back. It's too hard to get there. It's too costly. In fact, it's impossible. And there are too many rules. Jonathan and Sarah looked dejected. But Dr. A continued, you cannot pay where it's required. The tally works against you. So, he paid for you. And this is where it's important that you understand. With the darkness of the patio, Dr. A took out a strange black light. With both journals open in front of him, he held his black light over each page. As they watched, with the black light exposing words they could not see at first, in deep crimson, these words on every page appeared. Paid in full. You are forgiven. Overcomer. Conqueror. Now go, forgive others. As Sarah and Jonathan looked at the pages and fanned their fingers over the words, Alice returned with the food. She was so surprised, with Dr. A's black light still on and the words on the page being exposed in crimson, she was so surprised she had to set down the food. Paid in full. You are forgiven. Overcomer. Conqueror. Forgive others. As Sarah and Jonathan and Anya and Dr. A have their dinner, let's give them pause to consider this incredible truth. You see, you have a tally. I have a tally. Regardless of where you are today, God evaluates your precious life. He expects great things from you, and He has forgiven you. And it's certainly beyond our time today to comprehensively evaluate this profound subject. But let's take a journey. And on our journey today, to seek to better understand the tally that we carry in life, we'll look at 5 texts from 5 saints and come up with 5 summaries of these texts. First text we're going to look at today, to look at this summary, is found actually in the book of Genesis. This tally, this summary of the tally, begins in Genesis just after the flood, and it begins with Noah. Genesis 9, 1-5 says this: God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and on the birds of the sky, on every living creature that moves along the ground and all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has the lifeblood still in it. For your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal, and from every human being too. I demand an accounting for the life of another human being." A great charge that God gave Noah after the flood is that we have responsibility for ourselves, for others, for our world, nature, and it's built into our DNA. This accountability extends to the kings of Israel. And so we look in Ecclesiastes 3 at what Solomon says. Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 11-15, "God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there's nothing better for people than to be happy, to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This is a gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear Him. Whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before, and God will call the past into account." We learn from Solomon and these texts that respect for God, for time that we're given, for our free will and action are set into His plans for us. Next text we'll take a look at is Jesus speaking about this very topic. It tells us in Matthew 12 beginning at 35, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, but by your words you'll also be condemned." Jesus introduces a brilliant principle about this accounting, this judgment, this evaluation, the tallies that we carry in life and that we participate in. That right and wrong flow out of the transformation or the rigidity of our hearts. We need transformed hearts. And so we look to Paul. Paul tells us, Romans 3, 10-12 and 21-24. "As it is written, there is no one righteous, no, not one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came from Christ Jesus. We learn from what Paul writes that righteousness is Jesus' gift that He gives to us from the Father to the Spirit, through the Spirit to us. And last, we turn to Peter. Peter wrote 2 letters, and in 1 Peter 4, it tells us this: "Since Christ suffered in His body, arm yourself also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin." He continues, "Those in the world are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to Him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached, even to those who are now dead, so that they may be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit." You see, with this tally, this is evaluation. Redemption is a process through suffering and the rejection of this world. You see, we are transformed by Jesus, and He becomes an incredible standard that we are transformed by. Oh yes, we continue to tally, to evaluate, to judge in our world. That's how God made us, to judge for ourselves. And we can rest in the fact that God has determined, that God has sent Jesus Christ to be the ultimate judge of the earth, and in Him we know that we have victory. So, as you think on these things, pick up your life's backpack, take a deep breath, and let's travel together.
Thanks for listening to this inspiration from Ken Park. For more information, visit our website, churchatthecenter.com. God bless.